It is a cold day here in North Alabama, and so I thought it would be a great time for you guys to join me at my kitchen table and let's talk about soil blocking. If we have not met, my name is Samantha. My husband and I are first generation farmers and homesteaders, and we are growing on 2 acres of land. We grow flowers, vegetables, and this channel is all about our journey to figure it out. Before I show you how to soil block, I wanted to talk with you a little bit about the pros and the cons of soil blocking. So this is actually my first year to soil block. Last year I used plug trays and grew them in my greenhouse, and that worked pretty well. As I was trying to figure out how I was going to do my seedlings this year, I really landed on soil blocking. I actually took Lisa Mason Ziegler's flower school class in the fall. She soil blocks. I got to see how she starts her seeds, and I just thought, oh my gosh, that's amazing. I have to do that instead of using the plug trays. Now, for things like sunflowers, I will still put them in plug trays just because sunflowers need a lot more space to kind of get going than some of the smaller things that I'm growing. I will still be using plug trays, but for the majority of the things that we're starting this year, they're going to go into soil blocks. Let's talk about the pros of soil blocking. On Wednesday, I started 1,500 seedlings. Now, don't get excited. I wasn't starting tomatoes and peppers. I won't do that until really late February or early March. I was starting cool flowers. A lot of those are going to go in the garden really early spring, super late winter. So it's not hurting anything for me to go ahead and get those started. One thing that I love already about soil blocking is my hands stayed a lot cleaner. I will show you what that looks like when I show you how to make the soil blocks. But one of the things that I didn't love so much about doing the plug trays is that I would have to get the soil on my hands, put it on the tray, make sure everything is compacted really nicely, not too tightly, but you want it to not be just like super loose. So then I'd have to get up and wash my hands, dry them off, and then open the seed packet that I was gonna sow, and then repeat the whole process all over again. Now, I'm not somebody who's afraid of getting their hands dirty. It was a matter of I didn't want my seed packets to be wet. I don't always use every single seed in a packet, and I want to be able to save them for later. And so having wet hands when you're doing that can cause lower germination rates for seeds that were to get a little bit damp, and I don't want to do that. So I love that with soil blocking, my hands stayed clean, and I was able to just keep this line going. When you're starting that many seeds, you like for it to be a quick process. The next thing that I have done some research on and I'm really excited about is the fact that soil blocking is supposed to be much easier when you're transplanting your seedlings into the garden. They don't get shocked as much. Also, they're not growing down through an open end on the plug tray. You know, you've got the open end so that you can bottom water. Well, a lot of times those roots will kind of grow through that hole. And so when you take that plug out, you're disturbing those roots. And a lot of plants don't like that. And so with soil blocking, you're not disturbing those roots. They actually self-prune themselves because they're hitting the air. And so you don't have as much transplant shock when you transplant them into the garden. Another thing that I really love about soil blocking already is I have a limited amount of space of where I can grow my seedlings. We have two 2x4 foot shelves in our grow room. And so I can only fit so many seedlings in there at one time. And we are starting a lot of seeds this year. And so I really needed a way to do that in a way that was space saving. So I want to show you this. This is one of my trays that I use for my soil blocks. And this is a 128 tray. So as you can see, this tray here is 2/3 of the size of this. I can fit 128 seedlings in this tray. I can fit 180 plants on this tray right here. So I can actually fit almost 60, right? Yeah, 60 more plants on this tray than I can in the 128 trays. Well, I guess it's 52. But still, that's incredible that that many plants will fit in this small of a space. Another thing that I really love about soil blocking is that you are minimizing the amount of plastic waste that you're producing. So with soil blocking, you make your soil blocks, you put them on the tray, the seedlings grow, they go to the garden, the tray gets washed, it goes back on the shelf to do that all over again. And I know a lot of people reuse their plug trays, which is great, and I think you should do that if you're using plug trays. But a lot of times these are really flimsy unless you're investing up front in some really strong, I know like Bootstrap Farmer, they have really strong, sturdy, durable plug trays and 1020 trays. We actually have a few of those. We love them. We use them all the time. But a lot of times your trays are a lot more flimsy, and so they get broken easier. You have to throw them away, and we don't want to do that. We are really trying to focus on sustainable farming on our farm and on our homestead, and we really love that with soil blocking, you're reusing it for years and years and years and years. I mean, as long as this thing will last and hold up, we're going to keep using it. Another really great thing about soil blocking is that you're using less starter mix than you would need if you were using plug trays, because the soil blocks are only 1/3 inch by 1/3 inch. I mean, they're really small. You're not using as much soil as you would for your plug trays. Now, that is also a con, because with the soil blocking mix, it's a little more expensive than just regular potting mix that you would use to start your plugs. You've got to have peat moss, compost, green sand, and rock phosphate. You know, I paid less than $100 for, I think, all the stuff that I will need for this year. That's still a pretty significant investment. I actually don't know how much we spent last year. We didn't buy in bulk, which, I mean, I didn't know better. So I'm not quite sure how much we spent last year on our seed starting mix. But less than $100 for that many plants is pretty good, I think. Another con to soil blocking is that you have to water your soil blocks, or at least check them every single day. It's not the same as plug trays. Last year when I started my trays, I wouldn't even check on them for 3 days. I would water them and then I would wait. And then 3 days after I watered them, would come back and check on them, because I knew they were hydrated, they were fine. Now, I mean, closer to the time that it got really hot outside, I would check on them a little more frequently. But during the late winter and early spring, I knew that those seedlings were fine. With soil blocking though, those blocks are underneath those lights in your grow room, and they're on top of heat mats. And unless they're covered with a dome, they're going to dry out pretty quickly. And so you have to check them every day. I check on them a few times a day to make sure that where the seeds are, it's moist enough for those seeds to germinate. So you do have to check on them a little more frequently. I do want to tell you a little story about soil blocking that happened to me on Wednesday. When you are carrying your trays to your shelves for them to germinate, be very careful. I underestimated how many Lisianthus seeds that I had. I thought that I had like 1,000 of each one. Turns out I only had 100 seeds of each variety that I was trying to grow this year. And on Wednesday, I sowed all of my Lisianthus seeds, took them to the shelf, bumped the shelf on my way to lifting it up to put it up there, and dumped the entire tray. I was so sad. So when you are taking your trays to your shelves, be really careful. Now that we have talked about the pros and cons of soil blocking, let's actually block some soil. So to get started, you're going to need your soil blocker. This is the 3/4 inch by 3/4 inch soil blocker. You're going to need a tray, a soil blocking tray, which is this is just a cafeteria tray. And then this is our pre-made soil blocking mix. So what you want to do is you're going to get this mix nice and moistened. So just pour your water in there. This is about 8 cups of soil blocking mix. And you just want to put enough water to where when you pick up some of the soil blocking mix, it's pretty wet. Like if you squeeze it, you want a few drops of water to come out. So we're just going to keep pouring water in here, stirring it. See how the water runs out when I squeeze the mix? That's what you want. You want them to be pretty wet. Now that our mix is ready, we're going to take our soil blocker and we are just going to push using this little bar here, not this here, but this bar. We're going to push that into the soil. I kind of like to move it around a little bit. You really want to make sure that the soil is compacted into those little squares. Awesome. Next, I use a butter knife just to kind of shave off the excess soil. And then I kind of use the flat side of the knife to pack it in. I just want this to be really, really compacted because when I water these, I want them to hold together well. Okay. So now that we have that ready, I'm going to put this on my tray, push down a little bit with this bar just to compact it a little more. And then I'm going to use my fingers, push down and lift up with my fingers, wiggle just a little bit, and boom. We've got soil blocks. Check that out. Aren't they so cool, guys? And what's neat about soil blocks is they actually have these little divots in the top where you put your seeds when you're sowing your seeds. Once your seeds are in place, you can either come in with vermiculite or potting mix to sprinkle on top to cover the seeds that need to be covered. There are some flower seeds that you're not supposed to cover. Like I know straw flower, it says not to cover those. So kind of doing a little bit of an experiment. They're not covered. I pushed them in just a little bit. I've been spritzing them on the top with just misting them with water, and we'll see how well they germinate. Guys, that's how you make soil blocks. It's pretty simple. I really enjoy this process. My hands stay clean. Honestly, it's a lot of fun. I hope that you enjoyed this video, that you found it informational. If you did, I would love for you to leave me a comment, like and subscribe. That would bless us so much. Thank you for watching our channel. We really appreciate it. You guys mean the world to us. I hope you guys have a great weekend. And until next time, stay fruitful. Okay, now that we have talked about the pros and the cons of seed block,